you're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm asking the question, how do you handle the argument that you never planned on having? How do you deal with it? I know that many of us think about arguments and how we would handle the situation and, given the situation, what we would do. We think about it in a vacuum, like we would do this and then we would do that. It's like a play-by-play. But what happens when it comes out of left field? What happens when something like that happens and you're never expecting it? On today's show, I want to deep dive into that to understand what actually needs to be done in that situation, how to at least compute it to memory so that when it does happen, you're able to address it and respond properly. But let's begin with a situation that actually took place in my life. And I think that it's actually poetic in nature. Some of you will actually laugh pretty hard. Some of you may even be grossed out. But I think it's time to talk about something like this. And I've given enough time for the time to pass. I won't be naming many names, but this is definitely a true story. So picture this. It's 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'm trying to get out of the house. I have an early doctor's appointment, and then I have to head to the office. And so I'm going down the hallway. I've just closed the door, locked the door. I'm going down the hallway, and I hear the ding down the hall of the elevator. And I'm like, just like that. And I'm thinking, okay, goodness gracious, I gotta get there. I gotta hurry. I'm already running late. I gotta get through traffic. And I have literally my computer bag in one hand, right? I got my purse over my shoulder on that same side, and then I'm holding a brown paper bag. And no, it's not my lunch. I mean, I probably would be great if I could carry my lunch to work, but I don't. And I didn't have my lunch. It's a brown paper bag, and I have something in that bag. So I'm already a little off, and let me explain what that was. I'm going through a position where I was having some health issues where I was trying to figure out exactly what it was. I was trying to figure out what it is, what it was, and I realized that it could be actually my gallbladder. And so I had all these tests being run, and one of the tests that I had to run, and okay, this might gross some of you out, is I had to do a poop test. So I had to actually bring poop in a plastic container, like an airtight container, and I stuck it in a brown paper bag, right? I mean, just obviously for obvious reasons, so I'm not just carrying it around. And so I'm like, hold the elevator. And I got my bag and all my stuff and all my arms are carrying all this stuff. And I get in and I see my neighbor. And as I'm getting in the elevator, I can sense like this anger. I can all of a sudden it kind of washes all over me. And I was like, oh, okay. And for one moment, I wanted to get out of the elevator, but I didn't have a chance, and the doors closed. And the doors close, and literally I look at my neighbor gets right in my face and starts screaming at the top of their lungs. Okay, never expected this. Never expected to be screamed at 7:10 in the morning, with all this stuff in my hand, holding a bag with my own poop in it to be examined by a physician. I had no idea what I was about to get into. And so it's interesting. So he's screaming at me about a situation. I had tried to help another person that lived in the building. I was trying to help them with a situation that had taken place, and so I had actually reached out to my neighbor asking them if they could have a condo board meeting and they could talk to this person and have a conversation, because the person said that they had tried to communicate with the board, but the board wouldn't respond. And so, us, we take it in our own hands to try to save and help. And in the process, I reached out, and they actually accepted and gave this guy a meeting. But then the last minute, the night before the meeting, the neighbor calls me and says, hey, I have to cancel. I don't want to go to this meeting. I'm over it. And I'm like, you really, I kind of put myself out there, but that's okay. You need to do what you need to do, and I'll let them know. So I emailed all the board members. There's only 3. And I said, hey, I just wanted to apologize, but he's not going to make it, what have you. Thanks again for offering that for tomorrow. And so I thought everything was fine. And so I get in the elevator with one of these people that's on the board, and they were obviously very angry with the cancellation of that meeting. And there's nothing I could do. I can't change that. I can't tell the other person what to do. I can't make them go to the meeting. I can't make them keep the meeting. And so there I am, stuck dealing with the situation. And as my neighbor is literally berating me, spittle is on my face because they are so angry, and they're spitting while they talk. And I'm standing there trying to be calm, because at first it just took me off guard. 1, what is going on? 2, I never expected that. 3, that was way out of context. 4, I'm carrying poop. 5, it's just like, this is crazy. This is insanity. And so as we're getting further and further down, each floor, I start getting angry. Because there's only so long that you could deal with somebody yelling and screaming at you before you get angry, especially when it comes as a surprise attack. Right? A surprise attack is not what you're expecting. If you're expecting a full-on attack and you know it's going to happen, you can prepare, you can hunker down, you can get ready for that. But when you are not prepared for that, you can't prepare for that, right? You can, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's show, because you actually can be prepared, but you got to be so prepared that it comes in as second nature. And so as we're getting closer to the first floor, he's starting to really piss me off, okay? Like, seriously. And as the doors open and he continues to berate me, I get out and I literally jump into his face and say what I think about him in a few words, right? And it wasn't my finest hour. Okay, and I might have used some things that aren't that polite. And, I said a couple of comments. And it was bad because as I'm saying the second comment, I wish I could have taken it back. And there were multiple reasons for that. And let me explain. First off, I had nothing to do with this argument whatsoever. I had no reason to be being yelled at. I had done absolutely zero wrong. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody knows that. And I know that many of you have been in arguments where you have done zero wrong. You've done nothing wrong, and you're getting somebody yelling and screaming and berating you. And so I understand that. So this is for any of you out there that are literally like sideswiped, lambasted, and not ever knew what was going to happen, and then it happens. Okay. The other thing too is that because I had done nothing wrong, if I had just stayed quiet, I would have been completely in the right. However, I didn't. And so what happened here is this person berates me for 19 floors all the way down, yelling and screaming, spitting in my face, all that stuff, okay? Not good. And I make 2 comments once we get off that elevator. And unfortunately, those 2 comments put me into the same batch as him. So I'm basically okay, to some degree, sign off on his bad behavior by me making a comment back. Now, I know you go, well, what's that about? Well, when people try to get us to fight, which this was what this was about, he was wanting attention, and he doesn't care if it was positive or negative attention. In this situation, really negative attention. I ended up taking the bait. I took the bait. And unfortunately, when we take the bait, what do people that do this, what is their whole reason for that? It's to get themselves off scot-free. It's to make themselves feel better about a situation. It's to make us feel like the jack person. We're the bad person. We're the donkey, right? Unfortunately, I love donkeys, but I'm using the other word, right? So they make us feel that way, right? They make us feel that way, and it's really sad because they make us feel that way, and they're doing it on purpose to turn it around. So this is an entire gaslighting, manipulative project, and then when you jump in and you say something or stand up for yourself in a way that might be argumentative or loud, then they can throw it back at you and say, see what you did? You're a horrible person. You're a horrible person. And so think about it. In order to actually, if you want to win the argument, and I don't even know if there's ever winning the argument, but if you want to win the argument, the last thing you want to do is put yourself in the position that they want you to put yourself in. They want you to lower yourself down, engage in this stupid situation, get all angry about it, rub it all over you, and then see what happens. And the thing is that now, given the situation, the circumstances, it's early, okay? It's early. I'm one of those people, I get up decent early, but, I work really late. And because I work late, I'm not like a 7 a.m. early birder normally. That's just not who I am. Quite honestly, that's just not who I am. And my clients don't want to start at 7 a.m. either. So, I'm usually the 9 a.m.er at the office. So I'm already a few hours off. I'm already having to get to a doctor's appointment where I'm worried about my health. I'm thinking that I'm going to have to let go of my gallbladder, which later on I did. And I'm worried about what the results are. And I'm carrying a bag with a plastic thing that's holding my poop. Okay, so I don't know how fish out of water you can get, but this literally put me in a predicament. And I know that many of you have had these issues yourself. You've gone to work and you're having a great day and things are going well and you're smiling and you're like, wow, I haven't felt this good in a long time. Wow, I mean, I've been having a bad couple of months, but man, today's really changed. I feel really good. And you get in there and next thing you know, somebody's berating you on the team and you're like, whoa, where did this come from? Or you go to your neighborhood bar and you're so happy seeing somebody's got to argue and start a fight with you. You know, these things happen. Or you talk to your best friend and they got a problem with you. And so what I'm saying here is that I'm going to try to help mitigate these circumstances for you. I'm going to try to help you overcome these things, because when we get and fall trap into these situations, we fall trap, and then guess what? They're able to clobber us mentally, emotionally. And then some of us who are like me, and you actually care about people and their feelings. And so maybe you feel bad, man, I shouldn't have said that, he was a, POS. Maybe that wasn't the right thing to say. Maybe I should have held back from that comment. And, it's interesting because you think about the POS comment and you go, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best poetic thing I did. Maybe that's not the best thing I did, but it was hard to hold back for all that time. I mean, that was a long time of being berated, okay? So I know that many of you have gone through this. So we're going to talk about what to do, what not to do, how to talk about, how to look at response versus reaction. Because I waited, I was quiet, I waited, I didn't say anything, and then I reacted. What I should have done, real quick for the record, is I should have been calm enough, once the door's open, gotten myself a little space away from him where he's not spitting on me anymore. And I mean, literally, I could smell his breath. He was that close. Can't stand that. And I should have just stepped back a bit and said, hey, okay, this isn't my fault and it's not my problem. You are completely out of line, and what you just did here was completely out of line, completely unacceptable behavior. And I'd like you to apologize to me now, or you can think about it and apologize later. I'll talk to you later. Good day. That's what my response should have been, but it wasn't. And so, the thing is that we all know in a vacuum what we would do. But what happens when something comes at you like a curveball like this? What happens when you don't expect it? What happens then? And these are big questions, because we got to prepare for these things so that we don't fall trap into these things. We got to prepare so somebody can't trap us. We got to prepare, because the last thing we want to do is have any regret. The last thing we want to do is have somebody holding something over us. The last thing we want to do is somebody being able to turn the tables and do something really stupid and not nice and just really wrong and toxic, and then being able to get away with it because they say, see what Ashley said back? She's just as bad. She's a bad person. You see what I'm saying? So they're all able to deflect that because they just did something bad to you. They want to feel better about it. You made a comment. Oh, see, she got, and they're thinking, and it's not consciously, but subconsciously they're thinking, she got in the freaking dirt and mud with me anyway, so she's just on the same level. I don't have to apologize to her for anything. And so that's what we're going to dig deep in today, because that's what we need to talk about. We want to talk about, how do we deal with it? How do we respond? How do we prepare, and how do we put this concept into memory so that if this happens in the future, you're not taken off guard? No matter what's in your hands, no matter how early the day is, and no matter how least expected the situation is, you are in control. And that's what matters. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to dive deep today on that. And that's what we're going to talk about, because some of the most interesting things happen in the elevators, and I learned from this. It was a very learning experience for me, and I want to share this with you. So stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm discussing how to handle an argument you never planned on having. So somebody basically blindsides you, sideswipes you, and you're having a good day, or you're not expecting it. Next thing you know, they're in your face, they're arguing, they're yelling at you, they're spittling on you, just like I was saying that happened to me, right? And you're not expecting it. And sometimes when you're not expecting things, sometimes we go into autopilot. Sometimes we don't always make the best decisions. Sometimes we just go into instinct, right? We go into, oh, really? Yeah, okay. And we'll fight back. And I'm not saying that there's times that we shouldn't fight back. Don't say that. I'm not trying to be full-on pacifist. That is not me. But there are times that we don't want to be pulled into an argument that's not really ours to own. And what I'm saying here is that if somebody's going to argue with you and they're wanting to fight with you, they're wanting you to fight with them. That's what they want. They want you to be like, what's up? What's going on? Get out of my face. You POS. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They want all that, and they want you to get fired up, and they want you to get angry. They want blood vessels popping out. They want, that neck, like that whole side of your neck and that vein just popping out of your neck and your back starting to hurt. They want that. That's what they want because they want to bring you to their level. They want to bring you to that level. They want to upset you. They want to make you mad. But you know what? We're not going to get mad. We're not going to get mad. Some of you are like, yeah, we're going to get even. I hear you. But you know what? We're actually going to get even. That's true. We're going to get even, but we're going to get even the right way. We're going to get even the right way because if we try to fight the fight when we're not expecting the fight, we're not getting even. We're getting clobbered. Because what happens here is that they're trying to pull us into their little dirty sandbox so they can get away with whatever they're arguing and fighting us about. If you really think about it, a lot of the arguments don't apply to you. They just don't apply. And that in and of itself is very interesting because a lot of times we fight back. But what are we fighting back for? Okay, it's almost like we're just fighting back because guess what? Somebody's come to us. They're arguing with us. They're angry with us. They're fighting with us. And what do? Oh, okay, I'm going to fight right back. It's your instinct. But in order to offset any pain and suffering later, and also them playing the victim reality, see, because they changed the narrative. In my situation, I know that my neighbor's not like going home going, you know what, I was a jerk. I shouldn't have done that. I can't believe I got in her face and was spittling on her and screaming all these profanities and all. That was a bad idea. I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. I need to go apologize. No, I'm sure that never crossed her mind. And I believe that a lot of it too is because guess what? Because I jumped in. Had I not have jumped in and had I not have reacted, I would have been fine. If I would have just simply responded with, hey, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's going on with you today. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try to guess or anything like that. But I think you probably need to seek a therapist or a life coach. You probably need to deal with your anger issues. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, I deserve an apology. Let me know if you want to give it to me now or later. Okay, hey, I'll talk to you later. Good luck with all that. Have a great day. If I could have done that, it would have been a genius move. And that's what I normally would have done, but guess what? It was 7 a.m. I had a bag of poop in my hand. Going to the gastroenterologist to have a lab taken of it to see if I had to lose my gallbladder. So you know what? I wasn't prepared for that. I know some of y'all like, poopy jokes, so it's kind of funny that I bring it up. And I know some of you don't. You think it's absolutely disgusting. But either way, apologize. I'm not going to lie about what was in that bag, and I'm not going to lie what I was carrying. So it's like, that's the key. So let's jump in when I return, and let's talk about how we can do this right and how we can make sure that these things fall into our favor. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. And I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We're talking about arguments, how to handle the argument you never planned to have. A lot of us can prepare for arguments. We can prepare for issues. But what happens when it kind of blindsides us? What happens when it comes out of the middle of nowhere? You're not expecting it, so you're not prepared. Because any of us can prepare for those types of things. We can get prepared. We can say what we will and will not do. We can have like a structure, so if we're already planning this argument, we're already structured. We might be sitting there. Some of you might be like, well, yeah, I like to get really quiet. I like to lower my voice a lot to show that their voice is so loud. Okay, that's good, but that's interesting because that also makes people get louder. It's always interesting. And, when somebody's really enraged, when you start talking really low like this, it really does upset people. And I don't like to do that because I don't want to create any more enragement, okay? Because that's the thing, is that there's a level of sophistication when you're responding that you got to make sure that you connect with, because we don't want to play games. We don't want to manipulate. No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have altercation. But what we do want to do is we want to get control of ourselves. And by the way, let me give one caveat here because I want to make sure that everybody knows this. If somebody's getting physically violent with you, exit stage right. Okay, don't just sit around and do this. This is not. If somebody's getting physically violent, okay, you get out of there immediately. You don't have to listen to any of this. You get out of there immediately. You get to a safe place, and you go from there. Whether you need to call the police, call a family member, whatever you need to do, call security. But you don't want to stay in an environment where you could be physically hurt. So let's jump into the normal conversation, the normal argument where people aren't going to physically hurt each other. First off, we want to respond. Reaction is getting to their level. Reaction is, arguing and fighting. Reaction is screaming back and forth. Reaction is doing that sort of thing. So we want to respond in a way that's calm. Now, we don't have to be overly calm. We're not trying to be, fakely calm. We're just trying to be ourselves. Two, one of the things that I did, and the thing that I did well, though, in that situation, even though the rest of it fell apart, was I actually did listen to what they were saying because I wanted to listen to make sure it wasn't something that I had done. Okay, so that is one thing that I do take in consideration. If somebody does come to me and argue, fight, whatever, I will listen, but once I realize that it's not something I've done, then there's a point where I'm kind of done on the listening point of listening to the things that I've done wrong when I really haven't done anything wrong. And the thing, too, about these arguments is that the ambush argument is not the easiest thing to deal with. The ambush argument is classically really challenging. So as long as you understand that, and as long as you kind of get that, we can go from there. So remember, it's not always going to be the perfect playbook when you're ambushed. It's not always the perfect playbook when you're not expecting it. That's not something that is going to be perfect. But the better we do, the less stress we have, the less resentment or regret we have. Because we don't also want to regret. Many of us are empathic. Many of us care about other people. And the last thing we want to do is to have regret. I wish I wouldn't have said that to Steve. I wish I wouldn't have said that to Tom. I wish I wouldn't have said that to Jennifer. I wish I wouldn't have said that to whoever. Okay? It's a very interesting dynamic. And so you got to think about those things. So whoever your Tom, Jennifer, Steve, Joanna is, you don't want to have that. But at the same time, we don't want to allow people like that to walk all over us. Okay? So there is a fine line between reacting and responding. Okay. So what happens when we do erupt? So the thing is that these folks that are starting these fights are wanting to get you to erupt. That is what they want. That is their pleasure. That's what they want to see. They want to see you, basically freak out. They want to see you freak out, lose your cool, and get to the same level as they are. Because then they've won. They've got you to where they want you to be. They've got you where they want you to be. They know it. They got you. They're feeling confident about that. They're feeling good about that. And then they can take you to the next level. The other thing, too, is that when you do erupt, you're no better than them. So now that they've gotten you to erupt, you're in the game now with them. You're rolling around in the mud with them. And now, see, now they've basically allowed their stuff. So they're like, okay, well, now Ashley's basically they see this as, oh, Ashley's co-signing on this. Okay? So when we allow ourselves to erupt, what we're doing is we're actually co-signing on what they're doing. And I know that many of us do not want to co-sign on that argument because that argument is not what we want to co-sign on. It's not how we agree. It's not what we believe. It's not the truth. It's their narrative. It's them trying to pull you into a corner to argue. Now, like I was saying, how do they get off scot-free? Well, they get off scot-free because they pull you in and then they turn it on you. So, I know that a lot of people nowadays talk about manipulation and gaslighting. And manipulation and gaslighting is very interesting because what happens is when you're doing it, you're gaslighting, you're kind of trying to make somebody kind of question themselves, wonder, go a little insane, if you might. But it's all used as a way of getting somebody to get very angry or upset or hostile, just like manipulation. And see, what happens is that it's great it's great in their minds, right? Not for us, but it's great in their minds when they're able to manipulate us to a level that we don't even expect from ourselves. And so the last thing you want to do is give them what they want. So that's one of the biggest things that I want to really, 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 really emphasize is don't give them the pleasure. Okay? Don't. Whatever you do, don't. Because they want you to fight them. They want you to argue with them. They want you to scream back. They want you to go off. They want you to start a fight. That's what they want. And so I want you to really think about that, because if you realize that that's really what they're wanting, and you realize that's what they're trying to get from you, and you realize that they're trying to manipulate that to give them that, then you know that you don't really want to give it to them. It's like, why would you want to give them what they want when they're trying to go so sneaky about it? Why would you want to give somebody what they want when they're not helping you? Why would you want to give somebody what they want when they're actually super negative and trying to be super controlling? So, think about it. I find that it's very interesting too. The whole situation is that we want to be able to present our side if we need to. But maybe there's no need to present our side. I think that sometimes in arguments, when people ambush you, there might be a need to present your side. But I think when somebody ambushes you, it's kind of like, it's almost like bad business. I understand that the last thing that people do in a fight is the last thing they're going to do is say, hey, I'm going to hit you, because they want to hit that person first and have that person not realize that they're going to get hit, and then that person gets cold-cocked and they didn't think that it was going to happen. Okay. But the thing is that that's just not the right way of going by things. It's just not the right way. It's not the right way of dealing with situations. It's not the right way. Because what's happening is that they know that they're taking you off target. They know that they have the upper hand. And they know that how they're doing was was actually thought out and strategically thought out and timed to some degree. Now, not always. Sometimes people just get the best of them gets them, and they just can't handle it. They can't deal with it. They can't process their anger. They can't process their emotions, and they have to let it out somewhere, somehow, some way. So, knowing that this is a possibility, and I don't want us to sit there and ponder and pontificate on this day after day, week after week, year after year, but we need to create some sort of roadmap for the potential possibility of the unplanned argument. What do we need to think about? Because also this can be good for any argument. Because even if you know that somebody's about to argue with you and you kind of have a premonition, or you kind of get tipped off, or what have you, you got to keep your wits about you. And sometimes it's hard, because sometimes we're all emotionally invested in this, right? If you're emotionally invested, how do you deal with it? If this really upsets you, how do you deal with it? These are things that we got to ask ourselves, these questions. How do we calm down? Because I think it's easier to calm down in an argument when it's not somebody that you have some sort of emotional investment in. But I've also realized that the more it wrenches up, the worse it gets. The more it rinses up, the worse it gets. And when we allow it to wrench up, we also allow this person to push over the edge. And in the process, trying to push us over the edge to match their issues. And that's just not what I want to give in. I don't want to give that. I don't want to give somebody that type of power over me. And that is what is happening, is that, and there's times where you just got to walk away. I know that some of you want to stick in that battle, but there's times that you just walk away. There's times that you turn your back and walk away. Make sure that there's no violence there. But you just walk away. I'll talk to you later. I got nothing to say. Because I've also found, too, is that, when we lower ourselves to that point, even if we had a valid point, even if we had a valuable, valid situation, that valid, valuable situation is no longer respected because now they're using this as a weapon. How you reacted as a weapon. And so remember, if we're going to get any sort of, in the moment, any sort of redemption, we have to realize that. If we're going to get any sort of redemption, we have to realize that. We have to kind of go along with the fact that we have to expect the fact that if we don't come into this in our highest level, our highest good to some degree, that's going to be problematic. And I know that some people go the other side. We've talked about that, where they quiet their voice and then they get really low. And why are you talking like that? And you're yelling. And what's wrong? And that to me is okay, but to me that also is not the right way of responding, because that's also a bit of fakery, and that's also trying to change the game plan. To me, it's you talk at your level, you respond back with your truth, and then if they're not going to listen, you either take a time out, you take a break, or you say, I've had enough, because it's not on their timeline. If they're not willing to listen to you speak, then there's not even a conversation. We can't even have a conversation. And so that's something to really think about. And one of the things, too, is like, how much of the negative interaction are you having to deal with? How much of the negative energy is in your life? Do you have several people arguing with you and fighting with you on a daily basis? That's something to ask yourself. If you do, who are these people in your life? And what's the arguments about? And do the arguments ever get solved? Or are they constantly finding fault? I mean, when somebody is constantly finding fault with you and you're constantly battling and basically trying to survive the latest argument, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It actually seems to be getting worse. Because I've also found, too, that we have to be careful because we don't want to placate. So there's a difference between not lowering ourselves, and there's also a difference in not placating. I'm not going to accept that I did something wrong that I didn't do. I am not going to apologize for something I did not do wrong. Okay? I'm just not. And if somebody wants an apology for something I did not do, they're not going to get it from me. And if they don't want to speak to me because that's what happens, then so be it. I guess they're not going to speak to me. And that's the thing, is that I realize that if you apologize for something you didn't do, you're accepting blame and fault, and you're also lying to yourself for whatever reason that is. And I know some people out there, you're in relationships that you're too scared to lose, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a work relationship. But you got to think about your own, your own self-respect. You got to think about what's best for you. You got to think about all those types of things and see what it is that you need to be doing for you. And those are the questions that we have to have. Those are the questions that we have to analyze. Those are the things that we have to think about. And I think that that's very powerful for us to think about. I think it's very important for us to think about. And I think in that process, we don't want to placate. We don't want to accept fault we didn't have. We don't want to lower ourselves to their level. We don't want to lose our cool. If we want to, we can always say, hey, I got to take a break. I'll talk to you later. Or, hey, we'll talk about this when you're calmed down. Also, the other fact, too, is that we can't point out what they're doing wrong if we're yelling. We can't point out what they've done when we're yelling. And also, a lot of times with these folks, the idea of anything really going through, into their mind and them accepting any sort of reality is very difficult because they're already on DEFCON 5, they're already angry, they're already a little out of sorts, and they're already dysregulated. So we got to look at that as well. So when I return, I'm going to give you some more tips and tips on dealing with this and how to offset this. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspective with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about how to handle the argument you never planned for, what to do, what not to do. Because the big thing is not to lower ourselves. The second thing is not to fall in the trap of reaction. That's what they want. They want to get you at that level. They want you to be angry. They want you to react. They want you to get, all out of sorts. They want to dysregulate you. They want to do all these things to you to get you on their level. And then at that point, you have also crossed over. Now you're at their same level. They're now allowed to do what they do. You've basically affirmed their attitude and what they're saying instead of, saying, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Now you've affirmed that. You've gone to their level, and they're not going to apologize. The other thing, too, that many of you are dealing with is, placating or accepting responsibility for things that you've done in order to just quiet the argument. And that's just not good. I mean, if you're in a relationship like that right now, and you just have to placate to be able to get that person to be quiet or, to stop arguing with you, you're in a very controlling relationship. You're in a very, very controlling relationship with somebody that is controlling you. They are arguing and fighting with you as much as possible, and they know that they can. And they also know that you're going to back down for whatever reason that is, whether it's the fear of losing the relationship, the fear of losing the friendship, whatever it is. Maybe your fear of, you don't want to deal with conflict. You don't want to deal with confrontation. And that's painful because when we don't want to deal with conflict and confrontation, we usually somehow or not have it. Because eventually something's going to happen. And if you can, being able to step back and saying, hey, if you don't want to talk about that, or if it has nothing to do with you, or you're being honest, or this isn't me, it's being able to call it out. Hey, this isn't my fault. I didn't do this. This is not my fault. And I'm not going to take blame for this. And I'm certainly not going to apologize for something I haven't done. And if you've been doing this and apologizing for things that you've not done just to have some sort of quiet, peaceful moments in your life, you need to reevaluate the relationships that you're doing that with. And I'm sorry to say that, but you need to reevaluate and think about how you're going to continue down this road and making some changes so that you can have some boundaries and that you can have some peace and quiet. And so if this has been a long-term relationship, marriage, friendship, really analyzing, really looking at that relationship, and eventually you're going to have to call it out in a way and express your feelings to see if things can change. And if not, you have to decide how you want to continue to handle this. Because I've found that when people are in these types of environments where people that are trying to do this on a constant basis, when this happens a lot of times, it's just bringing pain and suffering and unrest into anybody's life. And when you're having to deal with this pain, suffering, and unrest, it's very taxing on the body. It's very taxing on the heart. It's very taxing on the mind. It's just very taxing. It's very stressful, and it's very overwhelming. And it's the last thing that we really need to deal with if we're wanting to have a healthy life, a healthy mental, emotional, and spiritual life. And so I hope that this show has helped you. I hope the concept of dealing with these arguments have helped you and put some thoughts in, just not reacting. Only responding, being quiet until you know exactly what's going on, and then you can respond if you want. Also you can take a break at any time, you can leave at any time, and also not apologizing for things that you haven't done. Just not doing it. It's bad business. It's not good. It's not right. And what happens is that person expects you to start doing that across the board, and they'll start fights with you to do that, and that's just not the right thing. It's definitely not healthy, and it's definitely not right for you. And if you're having those types of relationships with people and you're dealing with this on a constant basis, literally looking at these relationships and starting to kind of question some of this might be extremely important for you and your sanity. If you haven't already, check out the YouTube channel. We put up new video content all throughout the week. Short form content under a minute, longer form content over 5 minutes. We have a lot of content. We have 1,000 videos on YouTube right now. Also, you can follow me and join in the conversation on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, put in Ashley Burgess, Berges. Instagram, Ashley Burgess, Berges. You can look at us on TikTok as well. Relationship coach, I think. No, actually, just look up Ashley Burgess. You can find me there on TikTok as well. And so definitely check that out. But in the meantime, think about it. We owe it to ourselves to do what's right for us. And yes, it's good to think about others, and I think about others all the time, and I care about others. But sometimes we have to really think about us and think about what's right for us, and how do I keep my peace and sanity? How do I do it? What can I do? And what can I do on a daily basis to keep that? Even if somebody's coming from left field, wants to start an argument, blindsiding me, how do I keep my peace of mind? Because that's what's really important here. Living your true life. How to live your true life is being true to yourself, being kind to yourself, giving yourself grace, and standing up for yourself when you need to, but also eliminating things out of your life that no longer serve any sort of healthy purpose. Stay tuned. We have a great show for you next week. And check out, you can always go to Spreaker or Apple Podcasts, and you can listen to all the old or previous episodes of Live Your True Life Perspectives. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.